नमस्कार दोस्तों, एफआईए के वीकली प्रोग्राम टॉक विद एन एक्सपर्ट के इस एपिसोड में आप सबका स्वागत है। दोस्तों, हर हफ्ते हम किसी ना किसी इंडस्ट्री एक्सपर्ट को आपके समक्ष लेकर आते हैं और आज हमारे बीच में बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट पर्सन और बहुत ही एक अहम पर्सनैलिटी हमारे बीच में है, श्री हितेंद्र मेहता जी। हितेंद्र मेहता ऐसा नाम है जो वो किसी पहचान की जरूरत नहीं है। तो सर, आज आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है इस प्रोग्राम में। नमस्कार सर। दोस्तों, अभी हाल ही में इंडियन गवर्नमेंट ने एक बहुत ही अहम स्टेप उठाया है इंडियन बिजनेसमैन के लिए, एमएसएमईज के लिए। एलएलपी एक्ट में कुछ अमेंडमेंट्स आई हैं, तो उसकी आज हम बात करेंगे। तो प्रोग्राम की शुरुआत करने से पहले मैं डॉक्टर द्रव्या से रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि वो इंट्रोडक्शन के साथ शुरुआत करें।
नमस्कार दोस्तों। फेडरेशन ऑफ इंडियन इंडस्ट्री इज अ नॉट फॉर प्रॉफिट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. Federation of Indian Industry is a premier business and industry organization. Our vision is to help make India an economic superpower by bolstering India's industrial and business outreach globally and creating business opportunities within the nation. Our non-profit, led by Mr. Deepak Jain, Director General, is strengthened by 15 industrial committees along with 22 chapters in India and 42 chapters across the globe. We actively take policy initiatives with the Government of India while also providing business solutions to our members. Our Director General, Shri Deepak Jain, he's an industrialist, economic policies advisor, philanthropist, and a writer. He's also the National Working President of the Digambar Jain Mahasamiti. He has several papers and policy documents to his credit, which include Economic Vision Document for the Government of India, several papers on economics for BJP, working papers on Yamuna Action Plan, Plan for Gold Bond Scheme, Voluntary Disclosure Scheme, and Industrial Policy for Haryana. Our guest speaker for today, CA Hitender Mehta, he is the Managing Partner at Centrum Legal. He is the Central Council member of ICSI. He is also the Chairman of International Affairs Committee and Free Trade Zones. He is also the author of LLP running in 7th edition. And lastly, he is also a member of the MCA Committee. आज के प्रोग्राम में आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। नमस्कार मिस्टर मेहता, मेरा आपसे पहला क्वेश्चन ये है, लिमिटेड लाइबिलिटीज पार्टनरशिप एक्ट, एलएलपी एक्ट, जो सरकार बहुत पहले लेकर आई थी, बट इट हैज बीन इन इफेक्ट सिंस द फर्स्ट ऑफ दिस मंथ, 1 अप्रैल 2022। इसके कुछ सेलिएंट फीचर्स आप बताएंगे जो अमेंडमेंट में आए हैं?
थैंक यू द्रव्या फॉर आस्किंग दिस क्वेश्चन. दिस इज एक्चुअली very relevant and very important question. Why we are discussing about Limited Liability Partnership Act now? In fact, in August 2021, the government had made a significant amendment in the Limited Liability Partnership Act 2009. But these amendments were notified on 13th August 2021. However, all those amendments, they have been made operational from 1st April 2022. In a way that all those amendments which were carried out by way of Limited Liability Partnership Amendment Act 2021, so they have become applicable from yesterday, that is 1st April 2022. And with these amendments coming into existence or coming into force, now the entire perception about Limited Liability Partnerships Act changes. It becomes more easier, it becomes more simpler. For the audience like small and medium enterprises, audience like professionals who are hitherto not considering LLPs for certain reasons, like there were certain offenses which were having criminal implications. Like we had a section in the LLP Act, Section 69, which provided for a penalty of 100 rupees per day in case of default in filing of documents. So which actually had become big deterrent for small and medium enterprises. And then there were no provisions sort of with regard to adjudication of penalties. So now the provisions relating to adjudication of penalties have been introduced. And for SMEs, so in the new act, in the amended act, a new class has been created, small limited liability partnerships, small LLPs. So, which is essentially referring to small and medium enterprises. And for those small LLPs, there are comparatively lesser compliances lesser penalties, and lesser obligations under the Limited Liability Partnerships Act. So it is in a way directed towards improving India's ranking on ease of doing business in India as well. So I think these are the important aspects which are there in the Limited Liability Amendments Act. So apart from that, government has made the provisions relating to compounding of offensive very comprehensive. So earlier these were not in much details. These were very brief provisions, but causing lots of operational difficulties for the users of this structure. So now government has come out with very comprehensive provisions relating to compounding of offences under this new amended act also. And one more important amendment which has been carried out through this amendment act is that the government has tweaked the definition of business slightly, but this is going to have a far-reaching implication that going forward, if government doesn't want to allow any business to operate in the form of limited liability partnership, so it can do so by way of issuing a notification in the official gazette. So I think these are the salient features or key amendments of the Limited Liability Partnership Amendment Act 2021. And these act, as I earlier mentioned, these provisions have come into force from yesterday, that is 1st April. And a notification to this effect was issued on 11th February 2021. And on the same very date, the government had issued Limited Liability Partnership Amendment Rules 2022. And on 4th March, government came out with second set of amendment rules, which is Limited Liability Partnership Second Amendment Rules 2022. So these rules have been framed because of the various new provisions those have been inserted in the Limited Liability Partnerships Act. And from 1st April, the entire regime for limited liability partnership changes significantly.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is, what are the other important changes in this amendment? Sir, and how these amendments will make LLP structure popular among SMEs?
Okay, so now I think I need to explain the important changes in greater detail so that the audience, the participants can understand these amendments in a layman language, right? So when I tell you that government has made a change, made an amendment in the definition of business, so this change is very minute. Earlier, the definition of business was very comprehensive and it provided that any commercial activity, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is service, whether it is trade, or whether it is professional services, so it can be carried out through the LLP structure. So the definition, read as, I'm just reading one line definition was there, that business includes every trade, profession, service, and occupation. So this was very, very comprehensive definition. No exception was there. So you could have done anything under the LLP structure, provided it had to be a commercial activity. So the LLP structure is not available for kind of not-for-profit activities or kind of NGOs activities or kind of CSR activities. So this LLP structure has to be only for commercial activities. So this is provided under the LLP Act. So now in this definition of business, what government has done, so they have actually added one more line after this definition. When I said that business includes every trade, profession, service and occupation, now government has added except any activity which the central government may by notification exclude. So now government has inserted this one line in that definition of business, so thereby it has retained the power to direct in future that if any activity the government doesn't want to allow through LLP structure, so this will not be allowed. Now, if you ask from me, like what could be such activities which government may contemplate, so there could be n number of activities. For example, NBFC related activities, non-banking financial company related activities. So on this issue of whether LLP should be allowed non-banking financial activities or not, so there is not much clarity available. although if anybody wants to operate through a LLP structure, uh, and it want to do the activities like loan based NBFC or investment based NBFC or deposit based NBFC, so it has to seek prior approval from the Reserve Bank of India. And based on our experience, we have not come across a single instance where Reserve Bank of India has granted approval to LLPs. On the contrary, if you just glance through the website of Reserve Bank of India, so it mentions that LLP is a loose structure, right? So RBI doesn't seems to having enough confidence insofar as the LLP structure is concerned, and rightly so, because Reserve Bank of India does not have a jurisdiction over the limited liability partnerships, unlike the non-banking financial companies. On NBFCs, RBI exercise jurisdiction through the Reserve Bank of India Act, and there is a section 45I and then other provisions relating to non-banking financial activities. The another activity could be like cryptocurrency, for example. So if government thinks that it will not allow LLPs to function as a trader in cryptocurrency, as a dealer in cryptocurrency, or as an operator in cryptocurrency, so it can do so by way of issue of a notification. So this is the impact. So if government doesn't have confidence that LLP will be a foolproof structure, or LLP will not be able to provide that much confidence, so it will not allow LLP to continue with those kind of activities. So this is the possible impact, one can say, that will be there due to this definition of amendment in definition of business. So now your next question was that how this will affect the small and medium enterprises. So just to share with you that earlier there was no distinction insofar as the small LLPs were concerned or other LLPs were concerned. In the LLP Amendment Act, which has become operational from yesterday, that is 1st April 2022. So a definition of small limited liability partnership has been included. Insofar as your question relating to SMEs were concerned, how this will have an impact on small and medium enterprises or professional services firms also, I can include that very safely. I would like to share that in the new LLP Amendment Act, a new definition has been inserted, which is small limited liability partnerships. So earlier there was no separate category under the LLP Act. So now, by way of this amendment, the government has inserted a new definition, which is small limited liability partnerships. So according to the new definition, what will be considered as a small LLP? So there are two conditions. One is that the contribution of which does not exceed 25 lakh rupees. Like partners' total contribution in that LLP, in that limited liability partnership firm, does not exceed 25 lakh rupees. So that will be one condition. Second condition is that turnover of such LLP as per their profit and loss account for the immediately preceding financial year does not exceed 40 lakh rupees. So one is the total contribution by all the partners does not exceed 25 lakh rupees. Second is the turnover of that LLP as per last year's profit and loss account does not exceed 40 lakh rupees. So this is the criteria. If both the conditions are met, then that LLP will be considered as a small LLP, and it will be extended. It will be given all the benefits. Those are available to the small LLPs, which I'll be explaining in the remaining course of my discussion. Now, somebody may ask, like, what is the benefit the government is going to extend to small LLPs? So just to share with you that these small LLPs, they will be subjected to even lesser compliances compared to the other LLPs. And there will be lesser additional fee. Suppose there are delays in filing of documents with the government, with the registrar. So then the additional fee that is going to be levied on these small LLPs, which will be almost half of what will be paid by other LLPs. So in a way, 50% relaxation will be available to these smaller LLPs. And in case there are defaults, so then there will be lesser penalties on these limited small LLPs. So the government's thinking is perhaps that the lower cost of compliances the lower cost of compliances is likely to incentivize these in unincorporated sector to switch to the organized sector in the form of limited liability partnerships. So this is what is the apparent intent of the government, that by introducing the small LLPs. I hope both of your questions are addressed.
Ji.
So, Mr. Mehta, during our course of discussion, as a layman, if somebody wants to get into business, what all options would that person would have? And also, could you also talk about the tax rates, compliances, and other technicalities in each of the different options that are there?
Okay. So I think this is a very, very valid question, Dravyaji. One is that why one should adopt LLP structure, right? Supposing a person wants to do some business activity, or it wants to do some service activities, right? So now one has to look at the basic requirements for exploring various available business options, business structure options. So one is that whether the person is going to operate as a solo, as an individual, right? So if the person has to operate solo, so then he doesn't have the options of partnership firms, LLPs, or companies format, because it cannot be formed by a single person, right? So he can have either as a proprietorship firm or as a one-person company, which is a new concept under the Companies Act 2013. So only those two options are there. But if there are two or more persons joining hands for carrying out any business activity or for carrying out any service activities, so now those persons, they have another options which opens up for them. Now, either they can choose a conventional partnership firm, but there they will be carrying unlimited liability for all their actions, not only for their actions, for their partners' actions also. So they will be jointly and severally liable. If a partner does some wrongdoing, all the partners are equally responsible. So there is no distinction made by the Partnership Act 1932 or normal the judicial pronouncements are there. So many judicial pronouncements are there. So in case of conventional partnership firms, all the partners as well as the partnership firm, they carry unlimited liability, right? Now, if those two or more persons, if they want to choose between LLP, limited liability partnership, or a company, so now they have to do a comparative analysis between the two structures, right? So the comparative analysis could be done on different parameters. One, as you asked for, like what would be the tax treatment of these two structures, right? So if I do a comparative, tax based, criteria for these two structures, so companies, on the face of it, it may be having a lesser tax incidence. For example, if a company is having a 22% tax liability on its profits, right, compared to a limited liability partnership which has 30% tax liability, right? But having said that, this is not the end to compare on tax parameter. Now, on profits, I have shared that what is the tax rate, right, for both companies as well as LLPs. But subsequently, when these profit after tax are distributed by the company to its shareholders or by the LLP to its partners, so now what is the tax incidence again on that distribution of profits? Now, if a company pays dividend to its shareholders, so then there is a dividend distribution tax which is 15% plus surcharge is there. So effectively, the dividend distribution tax works out to be 17%, right? Whereas if a limited liability partnership, LLP, wants to distribute profits to its partners, so then it comes as a tax-free, income in the hands of partners. So there is no tax like dividend distribution tax on further distribution. Correct. Right. So now you have to compare both the things considering the overall tax incidence on these structures. So to me, it looks that tax incidence is lesser in the case of LLPs, ultimate tax incidence, because of there being no dividend distribution tax, and then there are certain advantages insofar as the alternate minimum tax is concerned, or minimum alternate tax in the case of companies. So if you compare on an apple to apple basis, LLP seems to be in an advantageous position compared to companies. This is my understanding. Right. So now, but tax is not the sole criteria, right? So now another parameter for comparing the two structure could be whether LLP provides you more operational flexibility or company provides you more operational flexibility. Whether LLP has lesser compliances or company has lesser compliance requirements, right? So now, insofar as the operational flexibility is concerned, so LLP structure is an agreement-based structure. So this agreement is, executed between the partners of the LLP. So they are free to decide what kind of business structure they will have, what kind of internal governance mechanism they would have within the entity. So partners are free to decide. For example, partners, they don't want to meet once in every 3 months. So they can provide in the LLP agreement that their formal meeting will be once in 6 months, right? There is no requirement of conducting annual general meetings, extraordinary general meetings, like in the case of companies, right? So whatever they provide in the LLP agreement, or you can call it a partnership deed also, just for the sake of understanding, so that will become law for them. So LLP agreement will become sacrosanct. So there will not be any deviation from the LLP agreement. Whereas in the case of companies, so companies are governed through their articles of association. Now, this articles of association is actually based on the provisions of the Companies Act. So whatever is provided under the Companies Act, so that has to be inserted, or that has to be, reflected in the articles of association. So in other words, I cannot deviate from the provisions of Companies Act insofar as my articles of association is concerned. So provisions of company law will have supremacy over any other, provisions which the partners want to include in the articles of association, right? So I don't have much room available for making any changes in the articles of association. So this is another, big issue for potential investors or potential, entrepreneurs if they want to choose a structure. But having said that, LLP, I don't say that there are no disadvantages. There are disadvantages also, in a way that LLP cannot come out with a public offering. It cannot issue shares, for example, right? So suppose tomorrow they want to have some investor. So investor usually expect shares to be issued to them, right? Whereas in the case of LLP, there is a concept of contribution by the partners. So now, if the investors are comfortable, by way of bringing contribution in the LLP, so then it is fine for them. But in case of companies, when the investment is invited in those companies in the form of shares, so investor usually ask those companies that they would like to exit by selling those shares by whenever their window of investment, which is 3 to 5 years. Generally, their outlook for investment is 3 to 5 years. So when they want to exit, so they ask the company promoters to list those shares on the stock exchange, and then they will exit from that company by way of selling of their shares through the stock exchanges, or through sale of shares, offer of sale to the promoters also. So they can decide. So these could be the issues which do not go in favor of LLPs. But then, if you want to consider it for your own purpose, your family business, right, and you don't want to go for listing of shares, or you don't want to invite such kind of investor who are keen on having shares, right? So then LLPs in any day is a better structure, or it provides much more flexibility, much more operational ease compared to the company structure. And on the last issue of whether compliance obligations are lesser or higher, like in which structure, so LLP has minimum compliances, like 2 compliances are to be done by them on an annual basis, and then there are certain event based compliances which are four to my mind. Like whenever there is a change in LLP agreement, whenever there is a change in partners, or change in name of the LLP, or change in registered office of the company of the LLP. So only in these cases you have to do some filings with the registrar of companies as of now. But other than this, there are no other statutory obligations for compliances under the LLP Act. Whereas in the case of companies, the compliance requirements are huge. Even if you want to avail bank loan, you want to pass a special resolution, you need to file it. Right? Any important decision, any material decision which is taken by the shareholders of the company, so that is required to be filed with the registrar of companies. Whether you are changing in articles of association, whether you are going for a bank loan, whether you are selling immovable property, or any important decision which you are taking, so you need to file it with the registrar of companies. Not only that, the law, the company law require them to hold, board meetings, one in every quarter, for example. Then they are obliged to conduct annual general meetings, and whenever there are important matters, they have to call for extraordinary general meetings of the shareholders. So if we compare both the structures on compliance requirement obligations, so then LLP is much more preferred option, because it has bare minimum compliance obligations under the LLP Act. And at the same time, both LLP as well as company, they are considered as body corporate. I mean, because both are incorporated, both are registered by the registrar of companies, and a certificate of incorporation is issued by the registrar of companies. Unlike a partnership firm, conventional partnership firm, there no such a registration certificate is issued. So in partnerships also, there is an option. It can be unregistered partnership firm, or it can be a registered partnership firm. But this registration is a post facto. Once you form your partnership firm, thereafter you can approach the registrar of firms for registering your firm in their records. This is just a post facto incidence. Whereas in case of LLP and companies, they come into existence only when a certificate of incorporation is issued by the registrar of companies. So they are more credible structure, and they are more widely accepted structures by the government departments, by the lenders, by the banks, and by other stakeholders.
So we just had an overview of the operational intricacies of LLPs and companies, different factors that one should of course keep in consideration when opting their future options for businesses. While during our discussion, we were also talking about the decriminalization of offenses done by the government. What are your views on that?
Okay, so I think before I I give you insight on the issue of decriminalization of offenses, I just want to share with the participants, with the audience, one important aspect, that so far how popular the LLP has been, right? So it will give a fair idea whether this structure, this LLP Act, is performing nicely, or it is performing on average on an average at so, or maybe it is a poor performer. So let me just share with you that till 31st December 2021, so we had 232,829 LLPs which were active.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, that 232,829, whether these are entrepreneurs, whether these are businessmen, whether these are professionals, so they have considered the LLP to be a preferred business structure for them, right? So which is not a small number, although comparing with the companies which are more than 15 lakhs, but then you have to, keep in mind that Companies Act, came into existence long back. Earlier we had 1913 Companies Act, then there was 1956 Companies Act, and then we had 2013 Companies Act. So Companies Act has been in existence for more than 100 years. Whereas this LLP Act was introduced only in 2009. So it has only completed in 13 years, 12 to 13 years, right? And within 13 years, we have more than 230,000 LLPs, right? And if you see, further breakup of these 232,000 LLPs, so majority of these LLPs are small LLPs. When I say small LLPs, so almost 1,95,000 LLPs, they have contribution of less than 5 lakh rupees. So the point which I'm trying to drive is that this structure is being adopted by the smaller businesses or smaller professional firms. For them, it is becoming very, very popular. So this number constitutes almost 84% of the total LLPs.
Right.
So if you see this number, this is very encouraging. So because the government's objective has been to bring unorganized sector, the small sector, micro sector, into this organized format of business. I think insofar as that criteria is concerned, this act has performed exceedingly well. This Limited Liability Partnership Act. So if you ask from me whether big business houses are not considering this as a good option, no, answer is no. I mean, if you see out of these 232,000 LLPs, around 7,225 LLPs, so they are the one which has a contribution of 1 crore or more.
Right.
So if 7,200 LLPs are having contribution obligation of 1 crore or more, so essentially these are the bigger players.
Definitely.
And if you see, if you do your search in greater detail, so then you will find that this has been adopted by very big industrial houses like Reliance Industries, for example. So I've seen that the promoter groups LLPs, I mean, they formed some 28, 29 LLPs way back in 2010. I mean, this is in public domain, right? So it is not that it is being adopted by the only small and medium enterprises, but this is also being adopted by the business houses. But then of late, because of the changes in tax structure or maybe changes in the policy by the Reserve Bank of India, so there have been some dampening sentiments, right? But then this structure is gaining importance, gaining popularity in the small and medium enterprises, the sector which was primarily intended by the government, right? So now, if I take you through this, your question relating to decriminalization of offences.
I just have a follow-up question, and this may be a little personal question. Would it be safe to assume that because of the LLP Act, and now since it is in effect since yesterday, the smaller businesses sort of feel motivated, confident to launch their own businesses under this act?
Yes, of course, they should. So this is the intent of this new Amendment Act. Right. As I told you that earlier, although it was not intent of the legislature that the LLP should be penalized in a big way, but then government introduced this provision in the main section 69 itself, which provided that if there is a delay in filing of the documents, which are bare minimum, as I told you, 2 regular documents to be filed every year and 4 event-based filings. So government thought that if these filings are also not done, so then there should be a penalty which is 100 rupees per day, right? So it so happened that small businesses are not very organized insofar as doing their compliances is concerned. We see many a time, everybody is filing their income tax returns on the last day, right? So why one should wait for the last day? So it happens that they are busy in doing some other productive works, and then these compliance requirements take backseat. Right. But then in case of LLP, supposing there was a requirement to file a limited liability partnership agreement with the ROC, so which is there whenever you incorporate a LLP, within 30 days you have to file your LLP agreement with the registrar of companies. Mm-hmm. Now supposing you forgot to file that as an entrepreneur, or because you are not very compliance focused person, or maybe you're more focused on doing your productive work, what you are good at, you forgot, right? Now the system says that until you file LLP agreement, no other document can be filed in the system. So, because there is only one requirement at that time when you incorporate a LLP and you forgot. So now next requirement of filing came after 1 year, right? So because there was a fine, the penalty of 100 rupees per day. So assuming that 365 days are passed now, so how much would be the penalty? 36,500 rupees only for filing one document, which is very, very high. So this became a deterrent for the SMEs who incorporated those SMEs. Now through these amendments, which has been done now, and this penalty of 100 rupees per day, which was there, and it did not stop anywhere. Suppose 2-year delay is there, then 700 days penalty. Then if it is 3-year, 1,000 days penalties. Now the government has come out with amendment that howsoever long, howsoever belated documents are there, they will put a cap on this. If it is a small LLP, then it will be 25 times of the normal filing fees. Supposing filing fees is rupees 100 per document, so then the upper limit is fixed as 2,500 rupees. Correct? It will not be like if after 1 year you're filing, then you pay 400 days delay into 100 rupees, which is 4,000 rupees. Here, now you will pay only 25 times of the normal fees. Supposing normal fees is 100 rupees per document, then you pay maximum would be 2,500 rupees. In case of other LLPs, if the filing fees is 100 rupees, then their maximum cap is 50 times, which is 5,000 rupees.
Right.
So it will not go beyond that, even if it is 1 year delay, 2-year delay, 3-year delay, whatever. So this will give much needed comfort to the small and medium enterprises and professional firms also.
Right.
Why I'm saying so? Because in conventional partnerships, when I said that they carry unlimited liability, right? In these days, whenever you're doing business, you never know, like you commit some default or some non-compliance of any provision, and this can result into heavy liability on you as a partner of those firms, right? So when this liability comes, so first somebody tries to make good through the resources available within that firm, correct? If sufficient resources are not available, sufficient assets are not available, then their personal assets could also be subject to attachment. So this is the risk they carry. When I say unlimited liability, even their house could be attached, even their personal belongings could be attached. So you are actually allowing a situation where your business liability is traversing to your personal, effects, or personal, assets are getting attached due to your business decisions. Usually people want to, create a wall, between businesses and, their personal lives. So LLP is a structure which gives you that opportunity. So when I say it is a LLP, limited liability partnership firm, so its liability is limited. And what is the limitation? It is limited to the extent of contribution agreed to be brought in by the partners. Supposing partners agreed to bring 10 lakh rupees each, so their maximum liability is to contribute 10 lakh rupees.
Right.
Not beyond that, not even 1 rupee beyond that. And likewise, the liability of the limited liability partnership firm is also limited, and that is limited to the extent of their assets, whatever assets are available in the LLP. So that is the maximum liability that one could foresee. So this is such a striking feature that, I feel that most of the partnership firms should get converted into limited liability partnership structure. And now, since this bottleneck which was there, but which was in the form of additional fee and heavy penalties, so those have also been done away with by this amendment. So they should consider this structure as a preferred business structure.
I understand.
Yeah. So now your another issue was relating to decriminalization of offences, right?
Right.
So this decriminalization of offences, also this exercise was carried maybe 2-3 years back by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So they adopted 3 important principles, right? So where they should be considering that we should decriminalize. So government, reviewed the entire provisions of the LLP Act, which were there, and they selected the provisions which were relating to minor compliances or less serious nature compliances, which are relating to purely filing of documents. These are only technical compliances, right? So filing cannot be said to be entailing criminal prosecution. So I was supposed to file a document which was not filed, so there is a delay, so it cannot be said to be having criminal intent or criminal action.
Right.
So all those minor compliance related filings or less serious nature offenses, where government thought that these are only technical nature of compliance requirements, so they have decided to do away with all imprisonments in those cases. No imprisonment will be there, only penalty will be there, monetary penalty will be there, right? So now how much penalty will be there? For this, government introduced a mechanism which is called in-house adjudication mechanism. So the all registrar of companies, so they have been given power that supposing there has been a default by one LLP or any of the partners, so they can approach the registrar of companies and they can ask him that this offense has been committed or this default has been committed. So please adjudicate this and let us know how much would be the maximum penalty for this.
Right.
Right? So in most of the provisions, a range is provided. Right? In case this offense takes place, so there will be a minimum penalty of say 10,000 rupees and which can go up to 5 lakh rupees. So now what would be the exact amount? So that can be adjudicated by this registrar of companies from yesterday onward, right? So now people will have more clarity and professional services will be required that the minimum penalties or minimum additional fees levied by the registrars. So their professional skills and their convincing abilities will come into fore, that they can get benefit for their clients. The second principle for decriminalization of offences that was adopted, that government considered it appropriate that offences which are more appropriate to be dealt with other laws. So government should not be dealing again with those offences under this law. So there should not be a duplication, right? If suppose for one offence, some other provisions are there in some other law, so let that law take, supremacy, and we will not deal with those again here. So we don't want to provide double penalty or double, penal provisions for one particular offence. And the third was that there were certain offences which actually involved mens rea. What we call is that criminal intent. Suppose you have an intent to defraud your creditor. So if it is in the nature of fraud, for example, so then for those kind of offences, there is no change. The government decided we will maintain the status quo for those offences which are done with the intent to defraud creditors. So their criminal prosecution will be there, their criminal provisions will remain there. So with these three principles, government adopted this structure and they made, I think, changes in almost 12 provisions where criminal prosecutions were included, and they have done away with that. One provision has been omitted by this Amendment Act, which was considered to be not required now. Right? So 13 cases they have done this, change through this LLP Amendment Act. So this should give more confidence to the potential investors, potential entrepreneurs to consider LLP structure. Correct. So now they say if you are doing business with the intent of doing business without having any criminal intent, you are most welcome. We will offer you this structure, which is agreement-based structure, very less compliances and very less filing requirements. You decide how you want to operate. So I think this is precisely what I wanted to share about the decriminalization of offences.
I think this is a great initiative on the government's end, and since it's been in effect since April 1, it should definitely motivate and instill a sense of confidence amongst the new entrepreneurs and the new businesses that come into existence from now on. Over to you, Sanjeev ji.
Absolutely.
Yeah. जी हितेंद्र जी, आपका आज का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। सर क्वेश्चंस तो बहुत हैं लेकिन समय हमें अलाउ नहीं कर रहा है, तो आज के इस एपिसोड में इतना ही। और मैं समझता हूँ कि आज हमारे ऑडियंस को एक नई दिशा मिली होगी, हमारे ऑडियंस को नए एक्ट के बारे में जानने को मिला। तो पिछले कुछ समय से हम देखते आ रहे हैं, पहले कई एपिसोड्स भी हम कर चुके हैं और हम सब जानते हैं कि हमारे रिस्पेक्टेड प्रधानमंत्री जी भारत को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए कितना कुछ कर रहे हैं। मेक इन इंडिया का प्रोजेक्ट उन्होंने स्टार्ट किया और अभी पार्टनरशिप एक्ट में, एलएलपी लिमिटेड पार्टनरशिप एक्ट में उन्होंने अमेंडमेंट्स किए और इवन इम्प्लीमेंटेशन भी हो गई। तो वो समय समय पर हम सब के लिए, स्टार्टअप्स के लिए, नए बिजनेसमैन के लिए वो कुछ ना कुछ ऐसा करते आ रहे हैं कि हम सब बिजनेस आसानी से कर सकें और ग्रो कर सकें। तो मैं समझता हूँ कि ये एक बहुत ही ऐतिहासिक कदम है और हम सब के लिए बहुत ही अच्छा है, और भारत अब आने वाले समय में कहीं किसी से पीछे नहीं रहने वाला। मैं समझता हूँ कि हमारे प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने जितना ईज हम लोगों के लिए कर दिया बिजनेस करने के लिए, अब हम सब की स्पीड पहले से ऑलरेडी बढ़ चुकी है और आगे और बढ़ेगी। पीछे हमने एपिसोड किया था इंडियन फॉरेन पॉलिसी के ऊपर, जिसमें हमें जानने को मिला था कि भारत की गिनती जो इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे गरीब देशों में की जाती थी, आज अमीर देशों में की जाती है और एस्टैब्लिश देशों में की जाती है, और भारत को एक बहुत ही रिस्पेक्टेबल नजर से देखा जाता है। तो मुझे बताते हुए बहुत गर्व हो रहा है और हम सबको गर्व होना चाहिए हमारे देश पर, हमारे प्रधानमंत्री पर, हम सब के ऊपर। तो इसी के साथ ही आज का हम एपिसोड यही समाप्त करते हैं। धन्यवाद।
Thank you so much, Sanjeev ji. Thank you, Dravya ji. It's been pleasure to be with all of you at FII platform. Thank you so much.
Namaskar. Thank you.
Namaskar.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Tell us in the comment section how you liked today's episode. Leave us comments about your questions, thoughts, and feedback. Do catch us live next week on Thursday at 6 p.m. on YouTube and Facebook. For regular updates, stay connected with us and subscribe to our channels. See you next week.